Today's special guest is Sharron Batsch, and she's with a company called At Ease, which is fund development software. She's here to talk to us about managing our donor data. And now this woman is probably more of a data nerd than me, and that's saying a lot. So she's going to talk to us about the importance of our donor data and managing our donor data, keeping it organized, the benefits of it, some cool tips. In fact, my microphone crapped out and I apologize for the quality, but I didn't want to scrap this. We talked about some really interesting things. So with that, let's welcome Sharron.
Well, I've used your software. I've used a number of other software platforms, and I know the benefit of being able to come into a position, sit down, go through the database and find out who's the regular donors, who are the high quality donors, who are the lapsed donors, and then to be able to go further into their records and to be able to say, okay, well, the last touch point with this particular donor was 2 years ago, and this is what we talked about. And then having that system to be able to set up reminders that, okay, I need to follow up and send a report at this time. And then when I go into that, to go to your KMS system and say, oh, there's the actual application that I sent 6 months ago that I need to follow up on. I cannot stress enough how important the donor management software is for nonprofits.
There's a lot of depth, and you can either do it the hard way or you can use the software and utilize it almost like an employee. If it costs X number of dollars a month, consider that a staff member, the cost of a staff member. And in many cases, it's far less than it costs to put a person in a seat. But if it's well used, it's hugely beneficial.
And that's the great thing about software like yours, is that I would often run a query, just run the database and see who have we not talked to in the last little while, just to keep me on track. Because when you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of donors, I can't remember them all. So I can just pull a report and say, ooh, I haven't talked to these guys in a while. And then I can just send a simple report or even a phone call to say, hey, I don't want to just call you next time we get a gift. I want to see how you are. What's going on?
Well, I think that's great. That is brilliant. And people are surprised by that. They are very surprised by that because they always assume that if you're calling, it's to ask for something. But to call and just say, thanks very much, or how are you doing? I don't think I've ever had that either.
Okay. Well, I know one of the questions that viewers are going to have is, what are the most important pieces of data that we should be tracking?
Well, I think, really good contact information is important. Making sure the spellings of names are correct, the address and all of that kind of stuff. When I get something and my name's spelled with 2 R's and I get things with 1 R, it doesn't really bother me, but it might bother others, right? And I think there's understanding why they're giving and what they're giving to, so that when they do give a gift and it's designated to an area, that the fund isn't called designated, it's actually more descriptive, so that they can feed back to that donor, what's been done with their dollars. And I think just keeping in touch with them periodically is a good thing as well. So I don't know if there's any one specific piece. If it's a corporation, we want their gifting criteria. I like to have their website so that we can go quickly to them. If you've ever gone on, TELUS has now improved their website, but there's some sites are, you have to really move around a lot to find out what you're looking for. Their staff members, I think, are really important too. Not every staff member, but the ones that you deal with and why they're there. Titles are really good, but maybe they're the go-to person for the golf tournament, or they're the go-to person for grants, etc. So whatever role they play in helping the charity do their work. And then just keeping on top of when you've submitted something, if it was received positively and you got a grant, or if it was declined. I mean, keeping up to date with what's going on. We always recommend a review date as well, especially with high profile donors, whether they're corporate, whether they're a granting foundation, or they're private individual, because things do change. People pass away, people move, people have new grandchildren if they're more, if they're older, they have new babies if they're younger. There's just a lot of different bits and pieces that help a charity understand pretty much what's going on and keeping it on top of it. Now, you can't do that with every donor. You know, you've got to classify your donors into the consistent donors. They're a wonderful group. They maybe don't give large gifts, but they're there every year. There's the monthly donors, which are also very valuable. Then there's the more high profile donors. One of the things that we've done in our software is identify the time they like to look at their gift, because being asked all the time isn't necessarily the best way to deal with the donor. They begin to feel a bit like a checkbook. And so we have a once a year category, and they could even be twice a year, but we will put in the month they would like to be connected, and rather than a specific date. And the reason we do that is the charity can pull that up. They can do a profile on that donor. They can give them a small phone call to let them know that they're sending some information out so they could review their gift, and then they can follow up with coffee, meeting, one-on-one, or whatever. So things that are important to the donor, I think is really key. During COVID, one of our friends that my husband golfs with, he's a pretty generous donor. And there's one charity in town that he gives a very substantial gift every Christmas time. And they started emailing him. He said it felt like weekly. He said, I was ready to phone that executive director and tell her to take me off the list. I've had it with them. So I think you have to, donors aren't checkbooks, donors are people. And as you said, the stewardship part is really important because it makes them understand how the charity views them. They're an integral partner or collaborator in the success of the charity and its ability to provide the services that the charity is offering. And I think looking at them as a collaborator, as sort of a partner in that way is important.
And I talk a lot about donor surveys as well, that if you can give your donors an opportunity to answer these questions, I know a lot want to be asked. Some are just going to junk mail it, but to really get that feedback, here's why I'm donating to you. Here's what I value. Here's how often I want you to communicate with me. And here's the communications that I like.
Yeah, that's great too. I think that the more you understand about their giving habits, it's kind of like going to your favorite dress shop. You walk in and they know who you are and they have some idea of why you've been there before and the things that you like. I mean, it makes all the difference in the world. And the other side of it is I've often thought that I've always suggested, rather than the thank you letter, especially if it's a business, a thank you article is a fabulous idea, because if they put that article in their newsletter, you're going to introduce the charity to a wide range of other people. The employees are going to sit down and say, I work for a pretty good company. Look what they're doing, because sometimes the employees aren't even familiar with all the things that a business does. And it's possible as well that clients of that business will find out what's going on.
I did another interview with the Sponsorship Catalyst, and we were talking about the importance of data and how she takes all of their data to help build their sponsorship packages, and the grant people that I've talked to as well too. And it's shocking how many organizations are not capturing that data, are not managing their donors with any kind of system.
So we've done a lot in that area, just in terms of our software, and trying to help people really understand what needs to be done and what needs to be collected. And if you look at it, there's not a lot. Like, I was going to use an example in that last newsletter I did, and then I thought, it's probably too much information. But take a granting organization. You need the name of it. You need to know when they accept their proposals. You need to have their keywords, what they do. We also link to their databases and the data pages, etc. And then we also have a place to store all the old grant application documents. And that's really important too, because then people know. So the software they put in a request, and the request either becomes a gift, or a decline. And if it's declined, we indicate why it's declined. So we're talking just a very few pieces of information that all of a sudden can be utilized by whoever is the next grant management person.
Yeah. Well, in the succession planning, I know that when I left the last position where I met you, I made sure that all my at ease notes were up to date, and I had all of my communications in there, and just to make sure that the next person knows what they're doing.
But ultimately, I think from a consumer standpoint, I look at donors as customers. And from a customer standpoint, I think maybe it should be an expectation that charities do a better job, because people can give their money anywhere. So there's no quality management kind of program. They have the stuff they need to do for CRA, and everybody's really careful about that, of course. But in terms of managing the data that supports all their funding, it's as though it doesn't really matter.
I have a guest coming on who I'm hoping he's going to do this next week, and he's talking about how charities should operate more under a business model. And we talk about CRM in the business world, your customer relations management software, but it's donor management software. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and At Ease?
Sure. Okay. Well, I started building At Ease way back when I was working at the University of Manitoba. I managed their all the training programs we offered business. And one of the people that came through training programs in microcomputers, let's clarify that. And I met a client, and they needed a fundraising software. So I built the system, and when I moved back to Edmonton, I asked if they wanted to co-market with me, and they said, no, go ahead. But the principle behind it was very much a marketing type of scenario. So our software is uniquely different than anything else that's out there. And we track by fiscal year how much people have given, what their sponsorships are, what their purchases are, their merchandise activities, etc. And it's given our clients an opportunity to understand their donors more effectively. In fact, there's a lot of information in there that provides them with the opportunity just to say thank you, especially consistent donors, people that have donated year after year after year. So the idea behind it was good information, why people donate, being able to say thank you easily. And the biggest thing is, because I taught computer technology, there are no queries to write, because those are a nightmare.
Anything else that you want to add in closing?
Well, yeah, train your staff. Guessing is not an option, and hope is not a strategy. So the idea that they don't have the money to train their staff is ridiculous. And if you are training staff, don't just train one person. Make sure everybody has has some knowledge, so that other people can use it too. In our case, we have created reports so that you don't have to interrupt somebody else's work. If the executive director is seeing somebody, they can actually pull a report on their own if they know how to do that. But I think well-trained staff are a huge value. I have a book, and it's all about human resources. What's it called? I've got it on my desk, I think. And I'll send you the name of it. And it was, here it is right here, The Era of Human Capital. And right in there, it talks about training, because trained staff make better decisions, they work more effectively, and you don't have to correct their work. It's really what it amounts to.
Oh, and consistency in data is so important when putting it in.
It's huge.
A messy database is just messy.
Oh, I've written articles on that too, because every once in a while you'll see somebody write something about, we have to rework our database again. Would you work with a bank that said that? I mean, oh, hey, bring your money here. We're just going to throw it in, and we'll work around it later. But yeah, I think consistency. I've always told our clients we want them to think simply. We want them to be very dull, so they are extremely consistent, and we want them trained. So those are actually good features. And if you have somebody that's sloppy in their work, phone your competitor and tell them you've got a great staff member for them. But don't let them work with the database, because that's a killer.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to include all your contact information in the description.
Thank
So
you
if
so
anyone
much.
wants to get a hold of you or wants to take a look at the at-ease software, we can point them directly to you.
Okay, that's lovely. And
your LinkedIn, I want to include that because you've got your new newsletter that you're doing.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you
And your
so
book.
much.
We have to include your book too.
Oh, I don't think I've even got a picture of it here, or do I? No, my book it's just pure common sense. It's not rocket science, but of all the books you see in the fundraising area, it's one that will save money, give you better data, and actually bring in more dollars. So it's very much a how-to, and none of it's difficult. None of it's difficult. It takes a little bit of time, but that time is well worth it in the time that will be saved at the other end.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sharron. It was lovely to see you again.
Yes, lovely to see you too, and thank you very, very much for inviting me to do this. We're talking about my favorite topics.
Yeah, mine too. I'm a data nerd. Yeah.
Oh, hey, I love that. I love that. Okay, well, thanks so much, Joanne.